Hey lovelies, welcome back to another video. So for this one I'm going to be talking to you about Alan Watts. I've got sort of a brief history about him, sort of where he grew up, and then I sort of talked about his career a little bit, and sort of what he was about basically. And then I have loads of quotes, sort of some of my favourites basically, well, my favourite ones and then others. He was a philosopher, and one of my favourite philosophers actually, because he's just really interesting. I just love the way his mind worked. So it's been really interesting doing some research, or more research on him, and I kind of was thinking, if you wanted to know more about him and sort of more in depth of, like, I don't know, his career, like his views and just things like that, but just in more depth. I could do another video on that for you if you like, and also, I mean, find some more quotes. I mean, I've got 52. I've got 52 here, just quite a few. But there is definitely more, because I didn't put all of them in this, because there were some that I was a bit like, not so keen on that one, or, you know, I've just put the ones that I find the most interesting into this. So I've got a nice, neat document that I've typed up by hand, made some notes on as well, and then printed it all off. So, and then kept it all together with a hair grip, because I couldn't find paper clips. So. Okay, actually I might keep it on there just for a minute. Okay, so I'll start off just by talking about, like I said, when he was born, where he grew up, things like that. Okay, so, born in Chislehurst in England on the 6th of January 1915. He moved to the United States in 1938 and began Zen training in New York. He received a Master's in Theology from Seabury Western Theological Seminary and became an Episcopal priest in 1945. He left the ministry in 1950 and moved to California, where he then joined the faculty of the American Academy of Asian Studies. He died on the 16th of November in 1973. So he was only 58 years old, which is really, really young, especially considering 1973, like that wasn't that long ago. I did look into his death a little, and it said about the fact that he was an alcoholic, or had suffered from alcoholism for many years, I think, and he was being treated for a heart condition. So I think the two factors sort of came in together, and he died in his sleep. So it's quite a peaceful way to go. I hope it was anyway. But a prolific author and speaker, Alan Wilson Watts is credited with the interpretation and introduction of Eastern philosophy to the Western audience. As his mother's students were children of missionaries to Asia, Watts began to be fascinated by Asian art, literature, and philosophy. So in time he learned Chinese and started to explore the fundamental beliefs and practices of religions and philosophies of India and East Asia. After rigorous research in Zen Buddhism, Watts published one of the first books on the topic, The Way of Zen, introducing the burgeoning youth culture to it. Due to all the wisdom it embodies, Watts even suggested that Buddhism could be presented and taught as a form of psychotherapy, and not only as a religion. Alan Watts is the author of more than 25 books on various topics such as philosophy, Eastern and Western religion, natural history, semantics, cybernetics, and the anthropology of sexuality. Watts was a man who tried and explored all that he could on mystical insight. I have collated some quotes to help you become more aware of yourself and your surroundings and make you think. Okay, so this is my all-time favourite quote of his, I would say. It's just a very long one, but really, really makes you think. Okay, let's go. Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream, and that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would, naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. I might read it again just because I like it. Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream, and that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would, naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all of your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. That's a really powerful quote. I just think it's such a deep way of thinking, but it's so true, and it really makes you think, and sort of think about your life today, and it's kind of, I don't know, there's different ways of looking at it. On the one hand, it's kind of, I don't know, is it making you think, right, well, if I could dream any dream, this isn't the life I'd want to be living right now, and so make that change? Or, I don't know, it's just, that's the thing I love about philosophy, is kind of that sense of it's open to interpretation depending on who you are, what you've done in your life, what you've experienced in your life. And I don't know, different people's quotes resonate differently. And, that quote could mean something entirely different to someone else. But to me, I've got my own ideas of what it means. That's what I just love about it. I think it's fascinating. Okay, this is the second one. This one I feel is quite relative to the current time with everything that's going on in the world. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. That one, so this is my second attempt at recording this video, okay, because the first time I didn't have my filter on my microphone, so obviously talking quite closely to it as well and reading things out, it was like every puff of air, it just, it was horror, so disappointing. It was like an hour of recording. Maybe even a bit more than that, but yeah, so I recorded this probably a month ago, and it was kind of, that particular quote I felt was really relevant to situations of being in lockdown and, just everybody having restrictions, nobody allowed to go anywhere and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that I really felt like was very relevant to the current time of the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it and join the dance. Like, there's no point fighting the whole not staying at home because that's what everyone needs to do. So yeah, I mean, there's always stuff going on in the world. I just think that's quite an interesting, I just like that quote. It's better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that one. Life exists only at this very moment, and in this moment it is infinite and eternal. For the present moment is infinitely small. Before we can measure it, it has gone, and yet it exists forever. That is a very powerful one. I like that one. If you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you'll spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living. That is to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. And that is true. It's very true. You can't survive without money, and which is a very, very sad fact, but it's true. And it just shows that life is short, and it's silly to spend your life doing something that literally makes you miserable. So only you can make that change, though. Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. That one took me a minute. Like, when I read it the first time, I was thinking, that's really bizarre. But then it's kind of, actually that makes sense. Like, you can't physically bite your own teeth. So to try and define yourself is impossible. And you shouldn't have to define yourself either. I'm just going to put that out there. We seldom realise, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own, for we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. That is a very powerful one. So we seldom realise, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own, for we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. This is so true. This is a really powerful one. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. So I like that because it's kind of, don't mess with things. You know, if something's stirred the pot, if you like, as in there's a bit of a, I don't know, it could be relative to anything. If things are starting to go wrong and you kind of don't really know how to fix it, just stop. Give it some time, let it settle, the water will clear again, you know? I just think instead of in the state of panic trying to fix something further, just take that breather away from it and just leave it, you know? Okay. No one is more dangerously insane than the one who is sane all of the time. He is like a steel bridge without flexibility, and the order of his life is rigid and brittle. One is a great deal less anxious if one feels perfectly free to be anxious, and the same may be said of guilt. That one, it really changed my perspective. I've never thought like that before, actually. So naturally you're going to feel less anxious if you allow yourself to feel anxious. Even though I've been feeling quite anxious lately, it's kind of it still does make you think. Words can be communicative only between those who share similar experiences. To have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you will sink and drown. Instead, you relax and you float. I like that one as well. I like them all, I'm sorry. I'm saying that after every quote. Okay. Try to imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Now try to imagine what it was like to wake up, having never gone to sleep. That one's a weird one. The only Zen you'll find on mountaintops is the Zen you bring up there with you. That I like, because I've been sort of up, not mountain, I suppose they are mountains actually, in Switzerland, and there is that real peaceful, serene Zen moment when you're at the top of a hill or a mountain and you just got a vast open view in front of you. It's breathtaking, and it's kind of, yeah, one of, like, probably some of the most peaceful experiences you'll ever experience. But yeah, that is true in the sense that you kind of think, oh, it's because I'm at the top of a mountain. No, it's because you've allowed yourself to experience that level of just tranquility, I think. At the end of the day, you could be sitting on a bench in a park or on a street, and if you allowed yourself, you probably could achieve that same sense of tranquility. If you just allowing yourself to sort of look at the details and just think about life like you do when you're up high somewhere like that. Yeah, but because you're in that environment and it's not a normal environment for you, I think that you just kind of, well, you're just trying to take it all in. But you just get so complacent with your surroundings, I think, that, I don't know, you just, details like that, just a normal street, you don't need to think about life like that. So it's just weird. We cannot be more sensitive to pleasure without being more sensitive to pain. Very true. When you get free from certain fixed concepts of the way the world is, you find it is far subtler and far more miraculous than you thought it was. You didn't come into this world, you came out of it, like a wave from the ocean. You are not a stranger here. I like that as well. That's quite an important one, I think. Especially if sometimes you go through life where you feel like you don't belong. And something like that reconnects you, I think, in a way. Okay, it's another long one. Your body does not eliminate poisons by knowing their names. To try to control fear or depression or boredom by calling them names is to resort to superstition of trust in curses and invocations. It is so easy to see why this does not work. Obviously, we try to know, name, and define fear in order to make it objective. That is separate from I. That is interesting. Growing up for me, my parents were sort of always quite against naming things. Things like depression. I mean, anxiety, I didn't learn about anxiety until I was late teens, I would have said. I didn't know what the term meant, especially. It was kind of, I was always nervous or, never anxious. And depression was not a word that was used at home at all. And it's interesting now being an adult and it being so frivolous in the world now and so talked about. It's kind of, I can see the benefits of labelling things, but I can also see the drawbacks, because I think in some instances words like that are used too freely, which kind of also, I don't know, can make it less significant because people use it with, oh, I'm a bit depressed. There's a difference between feeling down and being depressed. And that's what I'm saying. I think for some people, by establishing I'm depressed or I suffer from anxiety is a good way of overcoming the issue, in a sense that it's like, right, okay, this is my problem and I need to fix it. I can understand why my parents didn't want labels in the house, that there's no, it was never, I don't know, they were just really sort of, and even now, like, things like anxiety, it's not talked about at home particularly. I feel almost embarrassed by bringing up the word anxiety. It's kind of for me, I know it's anxiety. I have medication for anxiety, so I know it is a problem for me. However, at home, it's kind of, you feel a bit like, if you say, oh, my anxiety, this, that, or the other, it's kind of, don't label it. I don't know, there is a name for it for a reason. I just think it's a really tough argument. Because I do feel like, as much as the world, it's great that everyone's talking about anxiety and depression more, and it needs to be talked about, that's for sure. However, does there come a point where it's used too loosely? I was trying to think how to word it. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, that it's kind of, it almost gets to a point, does it get to a point where it nullifies the actual true meaning of that, I want to say, condition? I don't know. It's really hard, but that's where I feel like this is really important, because it doesn't get rid of the issue by giving it that label, but it can help. And for some people, yeah, I don't know. It's just, that one really made me think. I like that. Okay, sorry, I hope I didn't sort of go off on one on that, but it's just a really hard way to kind of explain what you're trying to say. And I'm worried about offending people, so. Okay, the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. I think for that one, it's more a case that it's leaving your mark. I think it's just that sense of, I'm here, I want to be known for something, I mean, again, that's my interpretation of it. It might be different for other people. I mean, it is true, the meaning of life is just to be alive, but yeah, you do have this, I think, natural feeling as a human that you want to have some kind of reason to have been here. Maybe not for everyone, but certainly for me, there's got to be I want to have achieved something significant in my life, and leave with something that I'm proud of. I don't know. The more we struggle for life as pleasure, the more we are actually killing what we love. True. There will always be suffering, but we must not suffer for the suffering. I like that one. Okay. The menu is not the meal. It's a really short one, but I really like it because it's true. Like, you go to a restaurant and you peruse the menu for ages, and then you choose one thing from it, you know? Okay. Another long one. The problem comes up because we ask the question in the wrong way. We supposed that solids were one thing and space quite another, or just nothing, whatever. Then it appeared that space was no mere nothing, because solids couldn't do without it. But the mistake in the beginning was to think of solids and space as two different things, instead of as two aspects of the same thing. The point is that they are different but inseparable, like the front and the rear end of a cat. Cut them apart and the cat dies. Another one that makes you think. Okay. This is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you're doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realise it is play. That one, I think, kind of relates to the previous one over it's silly to do things that make you miserable for the sake of money. Just as true humour is laughter at oneself, true humanity is knowledge of oneself. Every intelligent individual wants to know what makes him tick, and yet is at once fascinated and frustrated by the fact that oneself is the most difficult of all things to know. When we attempt to exercise power or control over someone else, we cannot avoid giving that person the very same power or control over us. That is something I'd never considered before, and actually it resonated. Our pleasures are not material pleasures, but symbols of pleasure, attractively packaged, but inferior in content. Society is our extended mind and body. Every individual is a unique manifestation of the whole, as every branch is a particular outreaching of the tree. No valid plans for the future can be made by those who have no capacity for living now. I have realised that the past and future are real illusions, that they exist in the present, which is what there is and all there is. Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment. There is no formula for generating the authentic warmth of love. It cannot be copied. Total situations are, therefore, patterns in time as much as patterns in space. I like this. We do not come into this world. We come out of it, as leaves from a tree. As the ocean waves, the universe peoples. I like that. What the devil is the point of surviving, going on living when it's a drag? But you see, that's what people do. And that's why you have to do what you need to do to make yourself happy. Life and love generate effort, but effort will not generate them. Faith in life, in other people, and in oneself is the attitude of allowing the spontaneous to be spontaneous, in its own way, and in its own time. The sense of wrong is simply failure to see where something fits into a pattern, to be confused as to the hierarchical level upon which an event belongs. There was never a time when the world began, because it goes round and round like a circle. And there is no place in a circle where it begins. Look at my watch, which tells the time. It goes round, and so the world repeats itself again and again. To put it still more plainly, the desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. To hold your breath is to lose your breath. I like that as well. Philosophy is man's expression of curiosity about everything and his attempt to make sense of the world primarily through his intellect. Normally we do not so much look at things as overlook them. What I am really saying is that you don't need to do anything, because if you see yourself in the correct way, you are all as much extraordinary phenomenon of nature as trees, clouds, the patterns in running water, the flickering of fire, the arrangement of the stars, and the form of a galaxy. You are all just like that, and there is nothing wrong with you at all. It's so true. Because they're all things that are natural and have formed on their own. No reason to change them, you know. You are the Big Bang, the original force of the universe, coming on as whoever you are. A society based on the quest for security is nothing but a breath retention contest in which everyone is as taut as a drum and as purple as a beet. The greater part of human activity is designed to make permanent those experiences and joys which are only lovable because they are changing. You and I are all as much continuous with the physical universe as a wave is continuous with the ocean. Things are as they are. Looking out into the universe at night, we make no comparisons between right and wrong stars, nor between well and badly arranged constellations. There is always something taboo, something repressed, unadmitted, or just glimpsed quickly out of the corner of one's eye, because a direct look is too unsettling. Taboos lie within taboos, like the skin of an onion. Only words and conventions can isolate us from the entirely undefinable something, which is everything. To be free from convention is not to spurn it, but not to be deceived by it. Okay, last couple. Parts exist only for purposes of figuring and describing. And as we figure the world out, we become confused if we do not remember this all the time. How is it possible that a being with such sensitive jewels as the eyes, such enchanted musical instruments as the ears, and such fabulous arabesque of nerves as the brain, can experience itself anything less than a god? I like that, because it's true. Like, actually, when you think about how we're made up, it's incredible, because there's so much intricate detail into our making that you just think, God, like, we are amazing beings, but it's where we become not amazing is through our actions and how we think and what we do with our thoughts. But yeah, so I really hope you've enjoyed that. I really enjoyed doing the research and reading to you as well. I like reading to you, so if you'd like to hear more quotes or, like I said, more information about Alan Watts as a philosopher, I will do some research, and I'll do more research and I can do another video for you. Likewise, if you'd like to hear about other philosophers, by all means let me know. I'd love to do more research for you. Or if you've got philosophers that you know of and that you like and you'd like me to do some research for you, please let me know, because I've really enjoyed this one. So I hope you're all well, and I'll